Chapter 3. Sunny Saves the Day. It's that hot, Maddie said tiredly. I wish we could find Sunny. I'm sure we will. And Sam broke off mid-sentence as he tripped, stubbing his toe badly. He recovered his balance and glanced down. It was a partially buried bone, grey and flaking with age. They clustered round it. Wow, massive bone. I wonder what it's from, Peter said. Jane walked on, studying the ground. Hey, here's another one. After that, they all started looking and discovered numerous broken bones. This is becoming a bit of a graveyard, Sam said nervously. How come we didn't notice them on the way up? Well, the canyon is quite wide here. I think we were walking on the other side of it, Peter said. It's not like we're following a proper path. Well, at least the bones look oldish, Jane said, trying to dispel the anxious feeling. She sensed Sam was wondering if he should wish them home. It was like a jinx. No sooner had she said that than they started to find bones which had scraps of skin or scales hanging off them, and in one fascinating but awful case, a strange three-toed foot with long, thin claws still attached to the metapodials. No complete skeletons, just ominous bits and pieces. Across a strange-looking beast. It looked like it had been dead a couple of days, and whatever had eaten it had feasted thoroughly. Only its huge horned head with a protective bony neck frill was left, with a row of vertebrae cleanly stripped of flesh lying behind it. It reminded Jane of cartoons of fish skeletons, where only the head, spine, and tail remained. I'm going to hold the stone and get ready to go, Sam said, as they progressed on, all nervously glancing around them as they walked. The quietness was not peaceful. It felt ominous. Suddenly, Jane cried out in a high-pitched voice, There, up on the cliff! Something's moving! They turned and looked where she pointed, and after staring for a few seconds, they too saw something hopping from rock to rock. In fact, there seemed to be several somethings on the cliff top. They were relatively large, around the size of a big dog, Great Dane size. The children broke into a trot, and to their alarm, the animals high on the cliff top matched their pace. Every now and then a long-snouted dinosaurian face would look down on them. There was no doubt they were being followed. I don't like this, Sam said. Neither do I, Peter admitted. Shall we go? Sam asked, grasping the stone in his hand. At that moment they heard a call from ahead of them in the canyon. It was ear-splitting and familiar. Yarp! 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 Funny! Screamed Maylie joyfully, and an enthusiastic Yarp! Was returned. It's her! It's Funny! Shouted Maylie, and started to sprint towards the call. No, Maylie! Stop, Maylie! The others shouted, but Maylie was running as fast as she could and ignored them. At the same time, Jane cast a glance up at the creatures on the cliff top and saw with horror that they'd found a way down and were hopping agilely like mountain goats from boulder to boulder, descending the cliff at high speed towards them. She turned a horrified gaze away, meaning to shout to Sam and Peter, and saw that they were already 30 meters away, sprinting after Maylie, who was running like the wind. She ran after them, fear giving her extra speed. She caught up quickly as Maylie stopped suddenly, uncertain as to which direction to go in. Sam and Peter were scolding her for running off, and at first didn't pay attention to Jane's puffing warnings. The repeated phrase, coming down the cliff, finally got their attention. Need to go, Sam said, trying to grab Maylie's hand, but she leaped away. Maylie! Peter shouted, also reaching out for her, but once again she dodged. Get her! Sam shouted to Peter, and at that moment a strange whistling noise made them all spin around. Several large dinosaurs, which looked remarkably like lizards except for the fact that they walked on two springy-looking hind legs, were gathering behind them, some standing on rocks, others on the ground. For a second everyone and everything froze. The lizard dinosaurs, because there was something very, very strange and unfamiliar about their prey, and the children, because they were literally frozen with fear. They had the horrible feeling that if they were to move, they would precipitate an attack. The moment was shattered by something large and fast-moving, which zipped out from behind the rocks, making a growling, hissing noise, and sped past the children, scattering the threatening crowd of would-be attackers. It was Sunny. She was much bigger and bulkier, and her face had changed shape with teeth like daggers, but somehow, without a doubt, they knew it was her. The lizard dinosaurs turned tail and fled. Funny, shouted Maylie, and would have run to her, but was restrained by Peter and Jane. Sunny stopped glaring after the lizard-like dinosaurs and turned to look at the children. She raised her snout and sniffed them, then shook her head from side to side. Despite her now fearsome appearance, she seemed nervous and uncertain. Slowly, so as not to spook her, Maidie took her rucksack off her back and pulled out a food gift. She took out the eggs and put them on the ground in front of her. Sam reached into his pocket, unwrapped the sausages and laid them by the eggs. The gift seemed to reassure Sunny, and she walked up to them with her familiar strange loping stride and snapped them off the ground. The older children recoiled as her lips lifted, showing rows of long, dagger-like teeth. But Maidie was not put off and reached out a hand to touch her. Sunny pulled back, making a quiet, rumbling noise. "Funny, it's me, your mother," Maidie said devotedly. Sunny stuck her neck out and sniffed Maidie, this time almost touching her. Maidie dug some more into her rucksack and put the bananas and a jam sandwich on the ground. Sunny bent down, swallowed the sandwich in one gulp, sniffed the banana and flicked it dismissively away. Then she turned, shaking her head gently from side to side, as if telling herself she mustn't linger. To Maidie's dismay, she started to walk away. "Let's follow her," Peter said. "No, I think we should go home now," Sam replied, walking after her nevertheless. "But we're safe. She's protecting us," Peter protested. "Come on, let's follow her just a little way." "Please, Sam," begged Maidie. "Maybe she wants to tell us where she lives. We've hardly spent any time with her. We can't leave so soon." Sam sighed. It went against all his natural inclinations, but Maidie's tear-filled eyes were hard to resist. And he also wanted to see how Sunny had settled in after her unusual beginnings. "Okay, but we must walk holding hands, and any sign of those horrible dinosaurs that were following us, or anything at all dodgy, and we're out of here." Sunny seemed anxious to move on, and they followed her at a half-walk, half-trot. She seemed in a hurry. Every now and then she stopped and looked carefully around, sniffing the air. They were heading out of the canyon, and after about 10 minutes they followed her up a steep, stony path which led up the cliffside and found themselves on the top. It was an impressive vista. Before them lay rocky outcrops and knolls, covered with trees, shrubs and ferns, and scattered here and there huge triangular hills which had a familiar cone shape. "Volcanoes!" Jane and Peter exclaimed together. "I was thinking, when we were down in the canyon, that the cliffs were made out of basalt, which is volcanic rock," Peter said. "Well, now we know where the lava came from. There must have been massive eruptions." 20 minutes later, they crossed over a small stream, and Sunny stopped to have a long drink. The thirsty children threw themselves on their knees and gulped eagerly out of their hands. The water tasted a bit strange, but they were so thirsty they didn't care. Sunny raised a dripping mouth, looked around, and gave a strange call which could best be described as a half-roar, half-whistle. It was not a sound they'd made her make before, and it made them feel faintly nervous. She was no longer the Sunny they'd known so well. She was a full-grown dinosaur, leading an unknown dinosaurian life in a strange world. Sunny set off again, not glancing back to see if the children were following. She seemed indifferent to them now and did not try to interact with them. Maidie tried to talk to her as they walked, but she gave no sign that she was listening. After a while, they crested a hill, and as the children looked down, they gave a collective gasp. There were about 30 Sunny-like dinosaurs at its foot. They were clustered together, and most of them were sitting or lying down in the shade of scattered clumps of trees. A faint noise drifted up, a strange mixture of sounds, hisses, and roar-like calls similar to the one Sunny had given earlier, and a slight rumbling. There was a lot of communication going on. "Why are so many of them lying or sitting?" Jane asked. "It looks like a daycare at nap time." As she spoke, Sunny called again and started to walk down the hill. At the same time, Sam and Peter reached out and grabbed Maidie hard by her shoulder, but she did not try to follow. It was clear that the time to leave Sunny had come. She did, however, call out sharply, "Sunny!" This time, Sunny did not ignore her, but turned around and walked slowly back to them. The older children recoiled and took several steps back. Close up, Sunny was simply petrifying, and it went against every instinct to stand still when approached by such a beast. Maidie, however, stood her ground, and Sunny bent her head down so that it was level with her face. She gave a gentle puff of farewell, which stirred the spirals of hair on Maidie's forehead, and then turned to walk purposefully and rapidly down to the waiting dinosaurs. She's going back to her herd, Jane said, stepping forward to take Maylie's hand. See, she's happy. Yes, Maylie said, although there were tears in her eyes. It was hard to let Sunny go again so soon. Jane gave her hand a sympathetic squeeze as they watched the dinosaur wind away to the bottom of the hill, touching snouts with a couple of other dinosaurs that she passed. She walked to a patch of sand and settled down. You know what, Jane? Peter said. I think you were right about the daycare. I think that Sunny and her herd are nesting. Nesting? Sam and Jane echoed in surprise. Yes, look. If you look very carefully, you can see they're sitting in hollows in the sand, like they've scraped out a bit of a nest. The other children gave each other a look. Peter was fanatical about dinosaur eggs and had bored them to tears on the subject. When I got the Sunny egg, there were some other nests with eggs in, Maylie said, cutting Peter short. The others turned to look at her. Of course, she was the one who had gathered the egg that had hatched into Sunny. Paleontologists have found collections of eggs and nests, fossil nesting sites, which show that dinosaurs behave like some birds today, like penguins or gannets, which live together in huge nesting colonies, Peter said. Can you believe we're actually seeing that? Well, now we know that Sunny really is a girl, Sam said with a grin. There'd been some debate on this matter when she hatched, but Maylie had always insisted she was a girl and that they used the pronoun she. Not necessarily, Peter said. Maybe dads do the daycare or egg care, like seahorses do today. The female seahorse puts a tiny seahorse embryo in the male's pouch on his tummy, and he feeds the baby and brings it up. That's probably why seahorses are endangered, Jane said cheekily. I doubt I would have made it through babyhood if only my dad had looked after me. Well, lots of birds share care of their chicks and do a perfectly good job, Peter countered, annoyed. True, Sam said peaceably. Anyway, it's hard to see how many dinosaurs are attached to a nest. They're so close together. Look, Maylie suddenly screeched. Over there, there's some babies. Oh, aren't they so cute? They look just like Sunny did when she hatched. The children had been edging closer, trying to get a better look, and had forgotten to be quiet in the excitement. Suddenly, a couple of the dinosaurs at the edge of the colony raised their heads and looked in their direction. They must have communicated their concern to the others, as heads popped up all over the colony and turned to gaze at them. As if by some unspoken order, 4 of the animals left their nests and started to walk swiftly towards the children with jerky strides, their tails held stiffly out behind them, their short arms tucked in. The children knew from their days with Sunny that the jerky walk could accelerate in a second into a lightning-fast attack. They remembered vividly how Sunny had been able to catch her favourite snack of rock agamas with ease. Agamas were particularly zippy lizards which lived on and in the rocks. Quick, Sam shouted, grabbing Jane, who was nearest. As the animals started to speed up, the children held hands and Sam shouted, Take us back home to the farm. And after what may have been seconds or minutes, they could never tell, the children found themselves falling rather hard onto the rocky top of the disappearing hill. They sat up, dusting themselves, and looked triumphantly and happily at each other. Another trip safely accomplished, and they had ascertained that Sunny was happy and had settled into a Jurassic life perfectly well, adapting to a diet of goodness knows what, as opposed to mince, sausage, and eggs. Come, Sam said. Come to my house and let's have tea. My mum made a whole load of jam squares yesterday, and she said they're specially for us. Oh, goody, Jane cried greedily, jumping up, rubbing her knee which had been grazed on landing. Those are my best, and I only ever get them here. The farmhouse kitchen was lovely after the heat, cool and quiet and somehow wonderfully normal. Everyone gulped on several glasses of water before Peter and Maylie settled down on stools by the old, scarred wooden table. Isn't it funny how delicious water is when you're really thirsty, Jane said. Boring, but delicious. The 4 children had just settled down with the tea and jam squares and were eating and drinking in a hungry, blissful silence when Sam and James' mothers came in. They looked extremely surprised to see the children. Are you back already? Are you having tea already? Mrs. Nell asked. You only just went up the hill, and Sam and Jane, you both had a massive breakfast not even an hour and a half ago. It's not even 10 yet, James's mum added. Well, the walk up and down the hill made us hungry and thirsty, Sam said, while at the same time Maylie blurted out, "And we thought funny, and she hath her own eggs, and we were chased by some horrible scary lizard thing, and it was very hot." The 3 older children glared at Maylie, who immediately looked stricken, remembering the countless lectures they had given her about keeping quiet about the stone and anything connected to it. They were each racking their brains, trying to think of something to say to diffuse Maylie's outburst, but it was tricky, and there was a second or two of silence before Mrs. Knoll gave a rather uncertain smile and said, "That sounds fun," and she left the kitchen, accompanied by her sister. "Isn't it sweet how nicely they play make-believe with Maylie?" they heard Mrs. Knoll say as they walked away. The children gave a collective sigh of relief. "Really, Maylie, you have to learn to keep quiet," Peter said crossly. "If you ever say anything else like that, we won't take you ever again." "Sorry," Maylie said repentantly. "I promise I won't forget." "You'd better not," Sam said grimly. "We can never, ever let an adult learn about the stone. It would be fatal." Please can you show your support for the podcast by subscribing, and then join us next week for Chapter 4, Tim and Hoots the Healer.